there was a hospital out in Shelton, Washington, and that's where Bigfoot lives. I'm convinced Bigfoot lives in Shelton, Washington, right next to the Indian reservation and a casino that I had to stay at. But long story short, they needed this platform, and it was a simple kind of provider privilege lookup system. And I'm like, okay, we know how to do this. So we built it. This was years ago. This is probably 15, 16 years ago. And it was before cloud and web-based apps were cool. We were doing web-based apps, and we put it out there. And I remember, I struggle with people's names, but I remember Laura Grubb's name like yesterday. And I called her, I said, what do you think, Laura? And she's like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, why? And she's like, you said you understood what we needed. And I'm like, so I ended up flying out to Shelton, Washington, and I sat at the nurse's station. And I spent an entire day watching them do the manual process. And that was a real pivot point for me in my career. That's where I really said, you know what? At the end of the day, I can develop what I think is really cool crap, right? And I can put that really cool crap out there. And 30 days later, I can go check and see if they're using my really cool crap. And when they don't, it tells me I never asked them and I didn't listen. It's so important. And I think a lot of IT vendors, a lot of development shop, they don't, at the end of the day, they don't really listen, right?
Most people think their tech problem is a tech problem. It's not. It's a workflow problem. And the worst thing you can do is throw another shiny new system on top of the mess you already have. Bill Walker's the guy CEOs call when they've hit the $10 million ceiling. Their processes are falling apart, and everyone's drowning in spreadsheets. He's the Purple Squirrel. Part technologist, part business strategist, part therapist. And he's here to tell you why buying another tool is probably the last thing you should do. In this conversation, we get into the growth breakpoints that stall companies, how to actually fix a workflow without lighting your budget on fire, and why the best solutions start with listening, not coding. Bill shares stories from healthcare to manufacturing, including the moment a nurse told him his new system was the worst thing I've ever seen, and how that changed his entire approach. If you've ever thought, we just need a new system to fix this, this episode will make you think twice, and maybe save you a few $100,000. Let's get into it.
Good morning,
Hey,
Bert.
good morning, Juliana.
Today we have a special guest, so I'm also going to say good morning to Bill Walker.
Good morning, Bert. Good morning, Juliana.
So I've known Bill for about 7 years now, and he is a purple squirrel in the tech industry. And we laugh at this, but he's a guy that can speak tech, work tech, build stuff, but he also understands people, and he understands business at a fundamental level. One of the things that I really like about Bill, I've talked to him again those 7 years, is that over the course of his 25-year career as a IT executive, he's worked in a bunch of different industries. He's been primarily in healthcare, but he's also taken stints in payment technology. He's worked in manufacturing as well, and all sizes of teams. And the thing that is really powerful about him is that he understands, again, the business basis for why things work, why things don't work. And often the problem that people experience is a workflow issue. It's not a systems issue. It's not an IT issue in the sense it's a technical problem. And the solution that a lot of people have generally taken is throw more resources at it. They feel that they need something other than what they already have. And Bill takes them back to the basics and say, okay, what are you actually doing? What are you trying to accomplish? And makes them really think about what they're doing in a way that makes them decide, okay, how do we actually solve for this problem instead of just hire more people or buy a new tool? And this is in alignment with what we've talked about before with our Frankenstacks. You probably don't need a new tool. You just need to
Right.
look at it through a different lens.
So before we jump into all of this, I have to know Purple Squirrel.
Mhm.
Where does Purple Squirrel come from, Bill? Because I've never heard this term. I know I've heard Bert use it several times because he thinks so highly of you. And he was like, he would have Bill on the podcast, we'd have him on the podcast. But what is a purple squirrel? Where did this come from? Please tell me the backstory of this.
Yeah, so it was several years ago, and it came about because I was actually interviewing to be the CEO of a company. I was going to venture, from pure technology. At the time, I was the CTO of this company, and we were hiring a new CEO. And the executive recruiter that was handling the candidate process, um, he looked at me one day and he after talking through stuff, he's like, "You're a purple squirrel." And just jokingly, I looked at him. I said, I'm a good old boy from Louisiana. Those might be fighting words, because I didn't know what it meant. And he was like, "No, no, no, it's a compliment." And basically, my degree and my education is in marketing. But in the early 1980s, I needed a job to pay for school. So somehow in the early 1980s, they decided that this small town boy from a little town in Louisiana might be a good computer operator. So that's how I got into IT. It was an old Honeywell DPS-7 mainframe machine, a step up from a card punch machine. But the purple squirrel aspects of it is, from an education standpoint, I'm education wise, I was learned how to solve business problems through marketing and other operational things. But I'm self-taught from an IT standpoint, so everything I know from an IT development, and we don't have to go into all the years and the different platforms I've developed on over the years, but it's really positioned me in my career, kind of that purple squirrel. I'm comfortable going in and talking to any level of an organization about what their needs are. And sometimes it's even helping them understand what the need is. A lot of times they're so confused at that point with the systems they have and what they're trying to get to. They've even lost sight of what the endpoint is. So again, kind of like Bert had mentioned, is one of my unique qualities, I guess, and I'm not real good at self-promoting, is being able to go in and just sit with a customer and understand, what are you trying to get to? And then once we understand where they're trying to get to, I've put together a really cool team that can then go in, and sometimes it's applying new technology. Sometimes it's just helping them understand their current technology and how to better utilize it. So I think that's the purple squirrel. That's why I still to this day will use purple squirrel. It's not fighting words. It's a cool thing.
Where do you see, so when you said that you go into these companies,
Mhm.
what lines of business are you usually working with when you're trying to solve a business from a business standpoint? So when it's pure technology, you immediately go, I'm going to run to the CTO and his business line. When it's a business aspect, is it more CFO, COO? What team are you doing this with? Because I think about our listeners, and I'm telling you where this question is coming from. I think about our listeners and someone who might be mid-level in an organization and say, well, I want to become a purple squirrel, or I want to solve a problem from a business standpoint, but I'm an accountant, and maybe that doesn't work. Or you have someone who might be a CHRO and says, I want to take this from a business standpoint. Can this possibly happen under my line of business?
So great question. I'll tell you, most organizations that I work with today are small to mid-size, right? And they typically, the most IT that they have in place is probably some kid that's doing some help desk support, right? And their email and all that kind of stuff is going through some managed service provider, and the majority of the systems they're using are cloud-based. So that, the days of having physical servers and all that kind of stuff in-house, or I don't work a lot with those kind of groups. So to answer your question, most of the people I work with are CEOs, COOs, CFOs, CHROs, it's those types that, and typically they're also in some area of growth, right? They've experienced some growth. And due to that growth, they're struggling with, how do they continue to be efficient without throwing bodies at it, right? And it runs the gamut of what the issue is. I mean, we've worked with companies to streamline invoicing processes. Just simply, they were using spreadsheets and Smartsheets to try to pull data together just to simply invoice their customers, because their workflow was very unique, and the traditional ERPs and other systems didn't really fit it. It got them to a certain point. CEOs typically just know that they have a problem, right? And they know that the people they have, they're great at what they do. CFOs are great at what they do. Accountants are great. HR people are great, but they also are often just, they're in a box, right? And in that box, they know that they can go, or they talk to their CFO buddy or their accountant buddy, and they go, oh, well, we use this, or we use this. And the next thing you know, and literally a company just the other day, they sent me a list of the systems they currently have in place, 32 different systems, 32 different systems. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. And none of these systems talk to each other.
How many were
And well, and my favorite was this thing they called the expense spreadsheet, which has nothing to do with the expenses. And each of their locations they're manually updating this expense spreadsheet, and that's what's driving their P&L. They have an ERP and they're using it as a cash drawer. They don't even but if you look at it, this is a company that was started 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, they had a handful of customers and they could manage it. And now they're a $34 million company, and they're still trying to manage it like it was the mom and pop. And they're finally like, okay, we can't do this. How you please help us, right? How do we start to pull all this together? And go ahead.
So that those break points between different sizes of companies, can you expand on that a little bit of where you find them needing your services? Like what size do they get to before what they were doing before with the spreadsheet just doesn't cut it anymore?
Yeah, I'm sure both of you have heard of the kind of that $10 million ceiling, right? A lot of companies like, we're doing really good, and we just can't seem to get past that $10 million ceiling. And regardless of number of employees, that's always I don't want to say we target companies, because we don't really target companies. A lot of the work we do is pure word of mouth. But that seems to be, again, I was on the phone with a company this morning. They're a pharmaceutical benefit management company that, again, has this platform. They're right, probably 8.5, 9 million. They're getting ready to expand, and they know the owner was smart enough to know, I'm not going to be able to get over that $10 million ceiling with the system I currently have and the workflows I have. So we spent an hour this morning from 7 a.m. Central to right before this call, right before this podcast, and, talking about, how do we start to tackle this? Because another key thing in this, and something that is where I feel like if I excel in things, is also helping the people that are doing the day-to-day work. These kind of processes also scare them to death, right?
Oh yeah.
They know their systems are ineffective, but it's what they know. So another key component, and I think where the Purple Squirrel comes back in, is that marketing side of me, right? I can pitch it where they feel comfortable, right? And we truly, we're a vendor, but we're more of a partner to our customers also, right? And by the end of any implementation or anything that we're doing, I demand in any engagement that the people that are doing the work are part of these discussions as well. Because if
Right.
you don't have their buy-in, it doesn't matter, right? I have built plenty of systems in my life where I thought, me and the owners or the CEO, whoever, we thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, and we put it out there, and guess what? They didn't think it was really good. It wasn't even sliced bread. And you go, well, why aren't you using it? I said, well, you didn't ask me. And so there's another thing. I've probably told this to Bert before, right? There was a hospital out in Shelton, Washington, and that's where Bigfoot lives. I'm convinced Bigfoot lives in Shelton, Washington, right next to the Indian reservation and the casino that I had to stay at. But long story short, they needed this platform, and it was a simple kind of provider privilege lookup system. And I'm like, okay, we know how to do this. So we built it. This was years ago. This is probably 15, 16 years ago. And it was before cloud and web-based apps were cool. We were doing web-based apps, and we put it out there. And I struggle with people's names, but I remember Laura Grubb's name like yesterday. And I called her, I said, what do you think, Laura? And she's like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, why? And she's like, you said you understood what we needed. And I'm like, so I ended up flying out to Shelton, Washington, and I sat at the nurses station, and I spent an entire day watching them do the manual process. And that was a real pivot point for me in my career. That's where I really said, you know what? At the end of the day, I can develop what I think is really cool crap, right? And I can put that really cool crap out there. And 30 days later, I can go check and see if they're using my really cool crap. And when they don't, it tells me I never asked them and I didn't listen. It's so, so important. And I think a lot of IT vendors, a lot of development shop, they don't, at the end of the day, they don't really listen, right? They think they know what your answer is, and they're going to give you what they think they know the answer is. And also you think a lot of these systems that are off the shelf, right? You can find a system today for a SaaS offering for as cheap or as much as you want to pay that you think, I'll pick on one system. I won't name its name. It starts with an S and it ends with an E. It's a very popular system. And it's a very expensive system, and you can customize it, and you can do you can add modules to it, and you can do all these things. But no one in that organization is going to sit and listen to what it is you really need. They're just going to charge you for all this stuff but what they will do is they'll sell you consulting time to come in and build it for you.
Right.
And I just think that's a massive disservice to people. And that's when I decided to create Workflow Innovators, it's because, it's not, I don't need to be the richest company in the world or whatever. I built it because I've been in those environments where I've been dependent on other vendors to help me get somewhere. And they all, 9 times out of 10, they fail. And, people spend thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars throwing money at IT. And they really shouldn't. I mean, they just need someone that can come in and listen and understand and get them to where they need to be.
So, Bill, I have a question following up to that. Are you a believer that companies should change their way of working to fit technology, or should the technology be built to match the way that they work?
The latter. Technology should be built to match the way they work. Now, but that's not to say that the way they work is the right way to work, right? So that's what we focus on. I have no problem, sitting and listening to someone's workflow and having a discussion with them to help them think outside the box of their workflow, right? That's Well, that's why it's so vitally important. They have to understand what their end goal is. And sometimes they think they know what their end goal is. My end goal is that I need a method of tracking the sale of this widget, right? Okay. Well, that sounds really simple, but what are all the steps and who are all the people involved in tracking the sale of that widget? And they immediately want to start talking about the systems they use. So a lot of times I will put in the, it's the system cuss jar, right? So we'll put a jar in the middle of the room, and every time they say a system, they got to put $1 in the jar, right? Because I don't want to hear about the systems you have and the deficiencies, the pros and cons of those systems. I need to understand what you're trying to get to. And then again, once we understand what you're trying to get to and everybody agrees, oh, wow, okay, that is what our workflow should be. Then we can go back into what the systems are. And sometimes, Juliana, to your point, we may build them a system that's unique to them and they own it. And that's another thing that once people understand, well, wait a minute, what you're building for me is I own it. Now the CEO is going, my multiple just went up a little bit because I now own my platform, right? So now the CFO is starting to think, because I do work with a lot of companies that are, again, in that growth stage and they've got a 3 to 5 year exit, right? So, so that's the important thing. And right. And another thing is leveraging, I mentioned it earlier, making sure that everyone is involved in the process. And you've got line level buy-in of what you're building. Because a lot of times also what we might end up building for people branches both HR, branches ops, branches sales, branches. And then when they start to see it come to fruition and they just go, holy cow, we can actually have a system that does all of this stuff for us. It's affordable. And now we got this really cool company called Workflow Innovators that will support us, and they're not going to rake us over the coals every time we need a change.
So let's just get into your business for a quick 30 seconds. Because I know that you said you're not big into self-promotion, so I'm going to promote this right now. With Workforce Innovators, you come in, you help them with this solution from a business standpoint. Are you then there post-implementation?
Absolutely. Typically, our engagements are a typical engagement for Workflow Innovators is me or someone else. We're doing probably a 3, depending on the complexity of it, we may do a 3 to 6 month just flat retainer deal to come in and help them understand what the problem is. Once we figured all of that out, then we will put together a proposal how we're gonna fix that problem. Does it include development? What kind of development is it going to be? Is it a new app build? All that kind of stuff. And then we'll roll into that mode of the engagement. Once the app is built or whatever we've built has been deployed and implemented, absolutely. We offer a couple of different options, right? We're their tier 1 support for that application we built. We are also the tier 1 support for any infrastructure that we may have put in place to support that application. A lot of times, Juliana, what happens is they also then go, you know what, can you be my MSP? Absolutely. So now we're migrating their Teams licenses. We're taking over their phones. We're taking over everything. And I've got partners in all that area that I've trusted for years, and they always do the right thing. So then we had to start again looking at, is this just a straight MSP?
Yeah.
So we really end up becoming their IT in all aspects of their IT. And then normally I stay on as a retainer as their fractional CTO or CIO also, where I'm sitting with their executive team. And
And I think that's important.
Yep.
And the reason I asked the question is we talk about how do we fix problems from a business standpoint.
Sure.
And a lot of times when people go to run their business or go to consult, they forget about that hypercare or that post go live support. So even when you are approaching and you say, yeah, we're going to build an app, we've tested this app, the app's gone live. Okay, bye.
Yeah. Moving on to the
Or
shiny.
we're going to be there for 2 months. Okay, our 2-month SLA is over. See ya never.
Yeah.
Thanks for the money.
Yeah. And again, the group I was on the phone with this morning, they have a current vendor that provides them a CRM type tool, and it does some things. And one of the biggest complaints is that his current vendor has become kind of less responsive, right? And he's paying this vendor a lot of money every month. And he knows that this vendor can't take him to the next level, right?
Yeah.
So he's reached out to us, and that's it. That's so important. The reason why I don't have to market and go out and sell is because our post-implementation support, I think, is second to none. I pride myself on, and again, our approach is so different that they want us to stay involved, right? Because who knows what's around the next corner, especially in healthcare, especially in a lot of the projects we're working on these days that have to do with supplement benefit management and GLP-1. And I mean, those projects are coming out of the woodworks right now that, it's important. And with my healthcare background, it's important that we're able to support them post-implementation because, and it's more affordable, honestly. I mean, a lot of these companies don't need a full-time CIO, CTO, right?
Yeah.
They need someone that can help them with strategy, make sure their cyber, posture is where it needs to be. It's the core stuff, right? And then, they need help with their email and all that kind of stuff. We can provide all of that as part of what we do. And then they just kind of keep us on. I mean, it's been really cool. And, and I only
do it. I mean,
Yeah, and
you're
I
giving them
only work with
organizational
partners
journey.
I trust. And that's another thing. I have worked with a lot of people over close to 30 years, and some of them, it just amazes me how they stay in business and I've been burned by some. The partners I have today, I trust 100% to always do the right thing and always provide the best level of service. And if they don't, then I move on. I don't, there's, because it's me, my name is on the line. And one of the things if I do pride myself on, I think I can count on one hand. I'm also very transparent. That's, again, this guy I was talking to this morning, he said, Bill, I'd love your honesty. You're just I'm like, dude, I'm going to tell you, if I can't do it, I can't do it. Right. But I guarantee I know somebody that can do it. So we'll go find them. I'll call Bert, and, that's just important. It's so important. And I'm trying to think of the way to say it. It's really making a very formal thing informal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just like us sitting here having a conversation. When I'm having a conversation with a customer, it's just like this. We're just sitting down, we're having a conversation. Let's figure it out.
But that's a business approach that I think people also don't understand, is that when you're in a meeting and you're very formal, we can categorize that as technical. You are following the script. You are staying within a specific lane. And now when you take a business standpoint, you're able to come in as a human and go, okay, let me read the room. Let me gain trust. Let me gain confidence. Let me win over the people who I need to use the web-based app that we're building. So not only are you going, here's the technical thing that we're doing or building you an app, even how you go about finding out what you need to be putting into that app, you're doing it from that business standpoint by not going, all right, I'm in my suit and tie, and here's our
Yeah.
PowerPoint. And oh, by the way, our PowerPoint's only 300 slides, not
Mm-hmm.
400 slides. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Very
yeah, what you're doing, you're helping companies borrow organizational maturity that they don't have. You're filling a gap that they don't currently have. You're becoming a trusted resource. But really, there's a book that my wife showed me many years ago, Cheaper by the Dozen. And one of the things that he does is he goes in and he does motion studies. And what you described with that nursing station was a motion study. You sat and you actually watched what they did. I can't tell you how many times we've gotten big paper on the wall and gone all the way to the left-hand side and say, tell me how your people start doing their day, and start from the start all the way to the finish for whatever process it is. And that process mapping that you're just describing is really powerful, because there's so many times that they don't actually know what they're doing, or the leadership doesn't know what's happening on the ground level. And then when you're talking about the mid-tier or the operational tier of your organization, they might have multiple ways that they do it. And sniffing out what the best workflow is or what the best process is, and trying to make it something that's repeatable and still in alignment with their best practices and still in alignment with how they want to work. I think that's really powerful when you can get the people that actually do the work to buy in, to say, hey, these guys are listening to me. They're going to help me do my job better. And something is going to change. It's not just more of they're making me do this. They listen to me. And we talk about this we were talking earlier about AI archetypes, where it's like how people respond to change, especially in regards to AI. We're trying to understand whether or not they're going to want to adopt what we're trying to bring in or not. And what you're describing is you're listening to them, so they're much more likely to buy in early, and they see the value in the change. So that's really cool, Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about another just quick example. This group out that we built this invoicing system for. And, to your point, is it took a few weeks, and this single person in the organization had this entire process and workflow in her head. And, of the steps she took to go pull data from here, put it here, put it here, put it here, to then run. And she was very adept at Excel. I have to give her credit. I mean, she knew how to manipulate. And so we kind of understood what the requirements were. We knew that there was nuances across the different groups that they were providing these invoices to. And, a lot of times also trying to build things to rules instead of exceptions, is also another key component. We help companies walk through, well, what's the rule? We'll deal with the exceptions and we'll deal with that, but we need a rule to begin from. And so the last couple of weeks we've been meeting with them, and, I'll tell you, after the first iteration, we showed her the first iteration of her new app, and she literally I think I told you this, Bert, she almost started to cry.
Yeah.
And she said, Bill, I feel so validated by what your team is doing, because no one really understood the complexities, right? And it was taking me 60 hours a month to produce these invoices. And, but you mentioned something, Bert, but as we were going through it, she would really beat herself up because she would find errors in her logic where she may have overbilled or underbilled someone. And and she's just this anxiety it brought her. And I was like, look, don't worry about that, right? You have to worry whether you're going to go back and collect or charge or whatever, right? But, that's the problem with a lot of these systems and things that people put in place. They almost build failure into them. Because also a lot of time what happens is a single person goes and finds a system that will help them do something in their part of the process that doesn't communicate back to the originating part of the process, right? So
Yeah.
it is cool, but again, it goes back to really understanding and be able to sit. And we always come back to the purple squirrel, right? The purple squirrel is the person that can sit there and understand that and be empathetic to it. I think that's another thing that is really important is, and this may come across sounding kind of cocky, but typically I know what the answer needs to be, but I never let them know that I know what the answer needs to be. Right. So we help them. The purple squirrel helps guide them to get to what the answer should be. Along the way, I learn a lot. Sometimes I learn that I don't know what the answer needs to be.
Yeah.
So going back to the story that you told where the woman was just so happy about this app, do you find that these companies have gaps in there because they are overwhelmed or they don't know where to start? Or is it because there's no one in the organization who is thinking business first? Because I do something very similar to what you do. And a lot of times I walk in there and I go, okay, this is an easy fix. This is a 1, 2, 3, it's not a big of a problem. But I'm curious, because you just have so much more business experience, where do you find that the need can't be met internally?
Okay. I think that, and just quickly to kind of qualify the types of companies that I work with, I typically, and if it's a company that has an established IT group and they may have developed some stuff on their own and stuff like that, I'm not going to go into that company, right? Because it's too painful to try to deal with established IT folks. It really is. Another example of that was, again, this group out in Utah. We were talking about, they've got a contract IT group right now that manages some aspects of what they do. And they're it's like the 1990s are calling, they want their IT infrastructure back kind of group. But, so normally I just to kind of qualify, most of the groups we work with do not have any type of IT presence that could help them with this. Okay. And that is what also breeds some of the problems. Okay. Typically what I see is, you've got, I call them the shiny new coin boys, right? These are the owners, the CEOs who, they know that they have some problems. They know that their workflows aren't very efficient, and they're looking for the next shiny new coin. Right now, that's AI, right? AI is a shiny new coin, and holy crap, I wish it would go away just for a little bit. The other thing is tech trends, right? You've got the accountants or the inline kind of people that are doing the day-to-day work, and they see something pop up. They consider themselves, air quote, technical, right? And basically they're jumping on the latest trend. It's, is it Smartsheets? Is it Monday? Is it Tuesday? Is it Wednesday? Or whatever app that's out there, right? That's going to help me manage my business better. And they start to do stuff in there, right? And they don't share that with anybody else. And then I will tell you, a lot of times what I see starts to cause these problems is lack of any unified strategy or ownership of processes, right? They're not sitting, as growth occurs, they're not sitting as a steering committee or portfolio man. They have no processes in place to say, okay, let's pull everybody together and talk about how we want to handle this. It's just coming so quickly that they're just telling people, go fix it. Right. And that, and then the other piece is kind of hand in hand with that is departments siloing their processes, right? This is my silo. Don't come into my silo. Don't mess with my silo. And I'll send you data out of my silo, but I'm not going to let you in, and it's really interesting because when you start to have those conversations with those inline people, they get really, really protective real quick of what their crappy processes are. And even though they know they're not good processes, they get real protective of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I see. I'll tell you, unfortunately, the majority of it is lack of a cohesive strategy. And when new things come about, the growth hits and they go from 10 customers to 200 customers, or they add a new product line, or they're doing this. Again, I mentioned GLP-1s. Right now, everybody I work with wants to throw this GLP-1 line into what they're doing. They have no clue what that really means. They just know they can make a lot of money off of it. So we're going to go figure out how to do GLP-1s. And they're not having conversations with the right people. They're not taking time to build a strategy around it.
It seems like a pretty normal business issue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, frankly, it's you externalize it. It's like, what do I need that I don't currently have that will make my current problem go away, as opposed to focus on what is my current problem and do I already have what or do I need to do is it a process change as opposed to a new tool?
Yep.
It happens all the time.
If let's say someone is in a company that they are small and they're not able to afford consulting services, or they did want to start looking at things from more of a business standpoint, what are some things that you recommend they do?
Still call me. I'll do it for free. I honestly, I mean, I started Workflow Innovators because I was doing this a lot for free, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think to answer your question, I think there's some tools and stuff that we could probably provide to listeners that could help them start to kind of see if they've got some gaps and maybe need to talk to someone. At the end of the day, and again, just from where I'm at, I guess from where I'm at as a business owner, as a professional, my position in life right now, I still have a lot of free conversations, right? And because I want them to make the right decision in how they need to get to the next step. And sometimes that's not me. That's not Workflow Innovators. And I have no problem telling someone that, you know what, here's who I think can help you. Right. It's interesting too, because sometimes it's amazing to me how many people think IT is free also. It's kind of, but I think number one is providing some tools and things to help people assess where they might have some problem. It's interesting because the majority of people that I end up talking to, they know they have a problem. And a lot of times they don't even really understand what it is. They just know that for some reason their bottom line doesn't meet their top line the way it should. And they always, and Bert, you probably agree, they always want to point at IT,
We're cost center.
We are a cost center. I like to make, well, I tell you what, I work with a lot of folks where we make our IT a revenue center for them. So that's a kind of cool thing I work a lot on too. I do help companies build revenue streams with IT. So, Yeah. So Julian, I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I, I want to make sure the person's getting the right help. We're not always the right answer.
Mhm.
Just like building a new app for someone isn't always the right answer. Sometimes it's just simply helping them define a cohesive strategy that they can then go execute
Right.
on themselves.
Right. No, that is super helpful. And again, just to bring it back to being a purple squirrel or even thinking about your business, a lot of times you never know what those free conversations lead to. And
Absolutely.
that's how you end up building a trusted network of people to come and help solve a problem.
Yep.
I mean, that's how Bert and I got connected.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just for a free conversation about him saying, "Let me show you how to streamline using this awesome product for your business," and then it's spurred off into this podcast and so many other business opportunities, all because of, hey, let's go out to lunch one day.
Yeah. And that's it. And it's relationships, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Whomever it is, we have to expand on the definition of a vendor, right? A vendor, it really is. For me, it's important that we're looked at as a true partner, and there's a relationship, and that partnership and that relationship is dedicated to help whomever we're working with to get to whatever level they need to be. If that's trying to get over the $10 million, ceiling that a lot of companies run into, or hey, I need you to come in because we're doing a 3 to 5 year exit strategy. We need to shore up our IT. We need to streamline process. Whatever that is, is making sure that we understand, we build that relationship and we get them where they
Okay.
need to be, because that's why they keep coming back here. We
Yeah.
do a lot of work within private equity, right?
Mm, that's a big
Yeah.
one.
So we I've done work for 2 different private equity companies right now, and they just keep coming back to us when they go do their next big thing, right? So they come to us, and we come in and we analyze what they need. The companies they're acquiring, we do all the So
I think something that needs to be said and pointed out is really from this conversation, what I've taken away is you cannot solve a business problem by only taking a technical approach. So if your business problem is, how do I get over that $10 million hump? You cannot say, well, let's get some automations in here. You have to look at it as, okay, can we use tech to solve the business problem of getting over the hump? But we need to look at it as a holistic business approach.
mhm. Yep. Because
All right.
yes, because throwing technology at it without any kind of guidance or understanding, a quick stat I think is cool. The average enterprise uses over 130 SaaS apps, but yet productivity is still lagging.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter what industry, they all experience the same problems, right?
Ooh.
And because I could have named it. I mean, I remember when I was kind of thinking about the company I was talking to Bert, I could have named the company something completely different, but I didn't want it to be focused on technology. I
Mhm.
didn't, I wanted it to be more around, helping companies understand workflow and what their workflow should be, and, um, and again, I think we go back to, um, I think a lot of my life experiences as well. I mentioned it earlier, but kind of being empathetic, right? I think IT organizations can feel very sterile, and it's very matter of fact, where um, I think a lot of times people go with our company because I am empathetic. I love that story when when I was on the phone. She said, and she was about to cry. She's like, I feel validated. I'm like, whew, that blew me out of my seat. I'm like, You know, if I can make every owner, every CEO, every person, and especially those line workers that have to do the work, if I can help them feel validated, man, I'm not sure I can put a price on it, right? It's priceless, right? So I think that's, as long as we're focused on that and we don't lose sight of that. There's some people you can be empathetic to, and I work with a lot of single owners too that can be a little narcissistic.
I get it. There is an episode that Bert and I recorded where I basically talk about how empathy is the way to ensure your job security and work with AI and tech. And I give the example of I was asked who should be let go. And normally this would be a hard decision, but someone was just so difficult to work with. You're like, well,
Decision making.
yeah, well.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And no, I was just going to say, I have turned down gigs and I have left jobs. I have left very well-paid full-time jobs because I didn't feel that the leaders were doing the right thing. And I've walked away from it. Bert, and like I said, Bert and I have known each other a long time. He's known when I've walked away from things like that. And
I remember it's hard decisions, and you did it anyway.
Yeah,
because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, so.
All right. Well, Bill, we've taken up so much of your time. I'm very grateful that Bert and I connected us and we finally got you on the podcast, and for just really sharing your knowledge with ourselves, like myself and our listeners. This has been really enjoyable.
No, it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So, like I said, I mean, this is me. Like, I do take my hat off when I go into meetings with people, but very rarely. This is me. So no, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, I've known Bert. Bert's so much smarter than I am. Most of the time I'm having to Google half the words that he uses, so I can. But Bert and I go way back, so I feel blessed that he would ask me to be a part of this, and it's great to meet you, Julianna, and look forward to the future.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, Callie.
Bye.
We want to extend a big thank you to Bill Walker for joining us on today's episode. If you'd like to know more about Bill, get in contact with him, or how to work with him, you can find his information in our show notes, or you can find his information on our website for this episode at www.acceleratinghumans.com. If you want to drop us a note, tell us what you like, tell us what you hear, you can always email us at info@acceleratinghumans.com. From Bert and I, we are just so grateful for your time and for listening to us. Talk to you soon.